Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and as Moses of the morning show would say, with a bevy of topics. In the studio already, I have a very smart lawyer, Mr. Musisi. Mr. George Musisi, welcome to Gang.
The listeners, and pleasure to be here.
Okay, now I got you. I also have a businessman, or the man who speaks for business, Mr. Walugembe. You're most welcome to.
Good morning, Oscar, and it's always a pleasure to join you here at the Capital Gang.
Thank you very much. We have other people coming into the studio, Honorable Lydia Anyoto, Honorable Katuntu. I hope they make their way soon. For discussion this morning, we also have Mr. Sidney Asubo, formerly of the Financial Intelligence Authority, coming in. But we can start with tables when you have unusual lawyers. But did I tell the listeners you're very, very smart this morning?
Thank you, Oscar.
Where are you going after? I'm sure you're not smart just
I have a number of events, including a wedding.
Including a wedding, yes.
I had to dress up. Also for the Mwalimu's class.
For Mwalimu's class, you're doing well. But have a peep when you get to the wedding. Have a peep. I don't want you to be smarter than the Baguli.
Most probably not.
It would be disaster. So, thank you for accepting to come and join Mwalimu's class here. What happened at ULS? We call it an attempted coup. And I don't know if any court cases coming up, but I know that there's an AGM coming up. Yes, maybe you can narrate what happened.
What happened, of course, is it has been, in ordinary parlance, has been termed as an unsuccessful coup.
A what?
An unsuccessful coup.
Yeah.
The failed one, like you've said it.
Yeah.
In the night of Saturday, I think at least we now know that two members of council attempted.
Two.
Yes, two members of council attempted to do something which to release a statement allegedly pushing out the president and appointing president and vice president, and appointing one of them as a caretaker, something which is unheard of in our regulations and laws, as a caretaker chairman. That's what they called it. Of course, we later also learned that they tried their best, like in every coup, tried their best to, Oscar, in other coups, people would always first go for Radio Uganda and UBC, or UTV as it was then, to announce how successful their coup was. In this case, they tried all their best to ensure that they get hold of the communication channels, the official communication channels of their society, which was unsuccessful. But the background to this could be the unsettled, what you can call the issues that are still arising from the election. And I think we have a few people who have not yet come to terms with the result of a democratic process. Democracy doesn't only present what you want. I think I can re-echo the words of Joe Biden, that we don't only accept democracy when we win, we should accept it when we lose. I know that many people may not have supported the President Isaac Semakade. Many people may not be in love with...
Many people supported him.
Yes, I'm talking about those who didn't. Okay. My point is about those who didn't. But he's the result of a democratic process. The runner-up, my brother Isaac, had every opportunity and capacity to challenge the results through the formal channels. He didn't. So I don't think that lawyers of all people should be questioning results of democratic processes. The predecessor, President Bernard, the first time he gave it a go, lost with less than, I think, 30 votes, about 23 votes. We didn't see this whole that we're seeing. So at the bottom of it all is that the current president is as a result of a democratic process. That's what we should accept. So this coup, which later failed, was as a result of those antagonisms that came up from the election. And of course, it was not anchored in the law, like I've said, because in the manner in which a president or any other council member loses his position is put in the law. It was not anchored even in logic or even in common sense. And of course, for other coups, under the law, there's what we call the Kazinian theory, Oscar, where they say that if it gets some degree of notoriety or recognition by the bigger member, in this case, the bigger, wider society. But in this case, even it got a backlash from the very members they were purporting to caretake. So I think the forces behind it were hoping for some external support and maybe some bit of recognition, which both didn't get. So we are likely to see more issues. This morning I've noticed that the attempt to go to court to block the EGM, Extraordinary General Meeting, which is slated for sometime this month, I think 17th. I know that there are efforts and we're likely to see those other machinations. But at the bottom of it all, I think as lawyers, we have a duty to respect democratic processes.
Do you think it was down to democratic process, or it was because of the language the president used, especially against the DPP?
I've ever represented President Isaac together with other lawyers when he was summoned at police, actually arrested at police, said Ichibudi, some years ago, over almost the same issues. So why I'm saying that as a result of democratic processes, that Isaac Semakade doesn't hide who he is. He campaigned using that kind of language. People who elected him, knowing who he is. He campaigned using the same language, the same dress code. So it's whatever we can call them, my brother Dr. Bugisu calls them blind spots, that whatever issues you may have with it, that this is the choice. And if you want to get rid of him, you can only use legal or lawful processes. You cannot use underhand. We cannot be seen as lawyers, as the vanguards of rule of law, to be using underhand methods because of an uncomfortable choice.
Yeah. But these two gentlemen are also bangers of tables, because to cook an idea like that and have a coup of two people, it's quite audacious.
Well, in this case, they banged spoons, I think, because clearly it failed. And the banging of the tables, yes. And I waited to hear from my brother Philip Nabi to see what result, but I didn't see any issues coming out of it. Like I mentioned, even himself appointing himself as a caretaker, a position unknown under the law, and there were also questions of whether he has the minimum requirements required of the office of the or at the helm of the presidency. So irrespective, the table banging should be about stretching the laws. Shouldn't be about actually outrightly operating outside the laws.
Yeah, and as we say in Uganda, who gave them the clever to also have another letter on a Sunday, a few hours
Saturday night, the attempted coup was
then the response was on Sunday.
Of course, like every power grab, the response has to be swift, and it has to be determined. So of course, the president had to act. Like we mentioned, he had gone on leave, but to respond to any coup, Oscar, you have to act swiftly, and of course, he also acted by suspending the errant members of council.
So is this suspension legal, whereas the other one you claim is illegal? You know,
I also
providing all the drama.
Yes, I also don't think that their suspension is also anchored in the law. The suspension of the errant members, because like we mentioned, the law provides for how a council member loses his position. So I don't think that, just like Munabi's alleged coup, I don't think that their suspension is also anchored. And those are some of the issues that we're likely to grapple with in the courts in the very, very short future, I predict.
Interesting. Welcome to Gang, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto Mutende, another lawyer here who is not banging tables.
We are led by those who bang tables, so we are humbly following our leaders to see how they are leading us through this season. But good morning to our listeners and viewers, and to welcome our colleagues in the gang, friends. I would also like to take this opportunity to stand with our people. You know, I come from Bugisu. We've lost so many people since the mudslides of 2 days ago. About 20 bodies have only been recovered, but over 200 people are still unclaimed. It's the same with the other
unclaimed or lost.
unclaimed because they are lost. They haven't yet been recovered. So far, we've only recovered 20
missing
bodies, but that is in Bulambuli. But the same problem has occurred in Sironko, in Bududa, and in the city where actually I come from, Bale City. We've so far buried 3 people because the river that flows through the city, Nabuyonga River, broke the banks and went away with property, with some people, with vehicles. Even my own home village in Nabweya, there's a place called Chibaga in Nabweya. The bridge has been washed away and people cannot cross from one village in Nabweya or Mbale to another place. So I stand with our people, and I really hope the Prime Minister and the Minister of Disaster were in our area yesterday. And we would like to thank the response from the EPDF, but we need more support, both relief and immediate, but also to come away from this recurrent. Every year we have this problem. We really need a permanent solution to the floods and to the mudslides that kill our people in Bugisu. I stand with them, and please receive our condolences. Thank you.
Very sad. We also have Mr. Sidney Asubo in the studio. You're most welcome to Gang once again, this time as a retiree from the Financial Intelligence Authority.
Thank you, Oscar, and the other gangsters in the room. I'm happy to be back here, although in a slightly different capacity. So I'm happy to be here. Of course, as counsel, it will also be remiss of me not to make a comment on the submissions made by my learned colleague, Mr. Musisi.
Yes.
I largely agree with what he has said, except insofar as what might have precipitated this attempted coup. I think the coup plotters might have learned from the master, because they saw, in my view, the attempt to illegally suspend the Solicitor General and Attorney General from membership of the council. Obviously, that was an illegal move. So I will not be surprised when others, when they see those who attempt to perpetuate illegalities, there's a tendency that they also may fall victim. So in my view, that might be the real reason why those who attempted the coup did so. But I do agree with the majority of the things they said. It is true that majority of members voted for Mr. Semakade, but a significant number also didn't.
Significant?
Yes, the significant number didn't. Now, but
you could say a few didn't.
My feeling is that majority, even those who didn't vote for him, have accepted that fact. They have accepted that fact, and so it is just the internal maneuvers within the council, not the membership.
Yeah.
It is just this.
Or within the body itself.
No. It's the bosses themselves who are among themselves.
Yeah.
It's like grasshoppers that have been put in a bottle.
Yeah.
They regardless of who was friendly to who, once the heads knock, they want to bite each other's necks off. So it has largely, in my view, little to do with the membership. It is those within the council itself who need to find a way of working together, despite the different philosophies that they may espouse in how to behave when you hold a public office.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Norgam.
Yes, sir.
Yes, all this drama at ULS, and you know how many months? It's just a couple of months in.
2 months.
So,
well, my comment is one. Newton's third law says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you bang someone's table, if you slap them, you can expect that at some point there's going to be some kind of counter-attack. So I think this is not unexpected. It was bound to happen.
Really?
Definitely. I mean, you can't insult people left, right, and center, and then you think at some point you won't get pushback. How they do it, we can examine and determine: is it legal? Should they have given him more time? Do they have sound reasons for doing what they did? Did they do it properly? Was it grounded in law? Did the letter have typos? All these things. Why was it drafted on Saturday night? Were they drunk? You know, all these things we can.
You really said the D word.
But the standard
Yeah, so that's my sense about this, and I hope that because you see, you can campaign by banging the table, but after you've taken leadership, it's very hard to manage people who are
campaigning. You should start working.
It's very hard to manage people who are who believe in themselves like lawyers by continuing to bank tables. You must find a way to bring people together, even those that didn't vote for you. That would mean making compromises, definitely. So it means you may not achieve 100% of your agenda, maybe 60%, but that would be good enough, you know. Yeah.
As Sydney Asubo here says, the lawyers in my circles, they seem to have accepted him and like him. So maybe the fight is within themselves, as Sydney has pointed out.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason why the lawyers voted for him, in spite of his the way he behaves. Maybe they feel that the system needs to be shocked a bit for it to behave better. So I think he needs not to, because he seems to concentrate on the form as opposed to the substance now, how you dress and so on. But what are those things, the lawyers who voted for him, what are those things within the judiciary, within the DPP's office that they want changed? Not necessarily insulting the person of the DPP, but how can you engage with her to ensure that those things are reformed? Yeah.
Lydia, you're another lawyer in the studio today. On the attempted coup, the response to the coup, and the call for an extraordinary general meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we are getting direction now, because there's an extraordinary general assembly on the 17th, and the Chief Justice has also communicated to all courts not to give leave to whoever wants to attend the assembly, which is also, I think, it's a good signal that they recognize the new executive, and when they want to do something, they are given leeway, because CJ also communicated that on the 17th of December, all lawyers who would like to attend the General Assembly, all courts should take note, and I think that is the direction we want to see. And in all this communication about the General Assembly, there hasn't been any vulgar language or abuse of anybody, and I think that's what we want, because we want meetings to happen. There's a time when we wanted a meeting and there was a court injunction, and we were not happy, because the best way to resolve issues, to provide leadership, is call meetings and to consult. So when we had that time when there was a court injunction on a genuine formal meeting, I think it took us back. But now we see that when a meeting is being called, it's being supported by the CJ, by every person I've met, every lawyer I've met is rescheduling their calendar to attend the 17th of December. So I think that on the 17th of December, a lot of these other issues will be resolved. Where I sit myself, I would be happy with the new leadership to deliver, to unclog a lot of the challenges we've been having in the judicial system, but respectively. Be firm, be courageous. I think Sema, one thing I admire about him is that he's firm and courageous. He has overcome fear, and that's very important for a leader. And but it shouldn't go with the cost of personal attacks. I think that's where the difference is. So far, we are happy. Yeah.
If Georgia said that some people may wish to sue to stop the meeting, but if CJ has already said please clear the day, then that will not go
I've seen a circular from the CJ's office, the registrar, communicating to all courts in Uganda to put on to recognize 17th as an AGM for the Law Council, and I think that's a very good relationship. That has gone without any problem. But I want to request all our land colleagues who are speaking for the executive to be able to differentiate what the rest of the leadership, the membership wants. Really, we want to get our issues resolved, but in a manner that is decorum. We don't mind about what Semakade stands for, but it should be encouraged that now that he's the president of the Law Council, he should remember to accommodate the less activists. I don't know whether I'm communicating. We appreciate. For me, I am all for Semakade because he has courage and fear to confront what I think many people cannot confront. Right. We have very serious issues which have been entrenched that we know that with his courage and fear.
At least there's two of you in the studio now.
He can confront. But there is that bit that I'm very uncomfortable with. Lydia, the personal attacks. Yeah, I don't subscribe to. Yeah. But I mean, there is a minimum, and what I'm going to tell my brother is, please, you people want him, encourage him to accommodate this other group of people who do not think that he should carry along that very aggressive language.
You saw the notice, the letter or statement he wrote to the CJ. Now that one was very clean and purposeful. You'd agree?
The one of being straight and yes, even this one about Dr. Besije and other matters of court. That's what we want to see done, because we've not seen many people being firm and courageous to confront some of the status quo, which we think he can do and he has been doing. I don't know whether Council I'm clear on that one.
Sure.
Yes. And you take it from there, George. I don't know what to call it. He says, when I met you, and a lot of people had fallen out with him because he met with him, but then he says, you asked me to be straight, so here I am straight.
We like the straightness and the language, for example, with the CJ, but this other one, no, we don't. I don't particularly.
Yes, go ahead, George.
Of course, as a leader, President Isaac will have to contend with those two issues. What Honorable Lydia and Sydney are saying, that one, you accommodate people who don't agree that approach or who are not used to your approach, while also not losing track of his style. So as a leader, of course, that is a tide you'll have to run. Over time, he'll stretch because we didn't. No one expected him to be a different person from who he has always been known to be. But yes, when you become a leader, there are some contestations, and I think that is something that we'll have to grapple with, because we don't want to give outside forces a chance. Because what we are seeing now, that the attempted coup plotters were backing, hoping for possibly some sort of support. There was a lot of rumors on social media on Sunday night that, by tomorrow morning the office will be besieged. I think that is the style that people have come to use to the KCCA Miss Jennifer Msi style. So, of course, it all turned out that they're just rumors. The same rumors came on the eve of the AGM, which brought in President Isaac, saying, people are going to be arrested at Munyonyo, there's heavy deployment. So that is the cloud that is hanging over some of the membership that sometimes possibly gave venom to the coup plotters, that maybe there will be some sort of action, and then we shall get recognition, and then the other people. Actually, when I saw Mr. Munabi on a media house on Monday morning, was saying those who are challenging our coup should be the ones to go to court. But of course, like every failed coup, it did get the traction that maybe they hoped, especially from the membership, like Sydney said.
But speculations happen. Remember what happened in Munyonyo? It was smooth and all through the way. You had your day. So this communication with the CJ, and even that picture that went viral when they were seated on the table for dinner, I think the frankness is what some section of the legal fraternity is asking for, and I think it works. Why is it okay for the CJ and it's not okay for the other stakeholders in the system? Why is it choosing the weaker? Has he chosen which ones to hit with those venomous language, and then other ones for? Because the CJ is always well. Even this call for 17th of December is so neat.
Actually, I think it works for both, because Isaac has had run-ins with the CJ before.
And that's what we are asking for.
He authored a two-page in the newspapers, which was titled that the Supreme Court has an Owini-Dolo problem. And of course was almost raising the same issues that raised in the letter, that the law churning out of matters in the Constitutional and the Supreme Court, the issues of Supreme Court not hearing constitutional appeals, those are matters which have been decided by the Constitutional Court, and then they go to Supreme Court, we get a stay, and we don't get. He raised those matters about 2-3 years ago, and I was sometime early in the middle of this year, I was in the Supreme Court where Isaac was having a matter, and the opposite lawyers tried to raise that against him, saying, my Lord Chief Justice, this gentleman has abused you before. And then the CJ, of course, had to say, no, it doesn't matter. You can criticize me, but you don't have to insult me. So I think it's a contest.
You have just said it. I think even the show can end. The issue about insults, but also criticism, they are two different things. We want to see firmness, criticism, real, no fear, but please, no insults. That's the issue.
There's a senior lawyer in the studio. He has been patiently watching George Musi. Most welcome to the Capital Gang, Honorable Abdul Katonto.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a problem with some...
But also the traffic is incredible today.
Sure.
Listeners, avoid Busega on the bypass. People are going there innocently, but it's terrible.
Especially those traveling to the airport. They might miss the flight.
Indeed. So welcome to Gang. I should ask a direct question. So who were you advising? Were you advising the plotters, or did you advise the response to the plotters? To be first direct question.
Well, in this particular case, I'm in self-isolation. like a COVID patient.
Self-isolation.
So I'm just an ordinary member of the law society.
Watching on.
Senior member that. Having been born earlier and also went to law school earlier
than Musi. And
so.
were you an advisor to the letter to the Chief Justice, because that was very well written?
Absolutely. Not that absolutely I was the advisor, but the letter was well written.
Well,
our training is words, our tools of trade. You can either mispresent your client's case because of the words you use. Actually, you can even jeopardize it because of the words you use. Whether in terms of drafting or even when you are just speaking, whether you're presenting a case in court or you're even doing pleadings. I've seen lawyers lose very good cases because of bad pleadings, just drafting. So to our colleagues who are coming in this position of leadership, as many of us move out, you need to take that into account. That how are you going to present your case, either to the general membership or even to the public, and they're going to mistake it, because perception sometimes is more important than reality. What people perceive to be. So if you decide to say, well, I'll try to be vulgar, other people switch off, definitely switch off, and then the biggest point is lost in that, your choice of words and so on. I read President Semakade's letter. This time I could see a maturity in it, because he had some legitimate points he was raising. They are not lost out. The language was strong but acceptable. This thing, his language, for example, against when he was campaigning, against the Attorney General, then this one against the DPP, really, they were so repulsive to many people, including me. I'm like, oh my God, what is this going on? I just want my leader to be my leader such that he presents my case. But he was caught between the campaign rhetoric and then the office now he was holding. How does he move on there? Because a section of his constituents had gotten excited with that sort of approach. And yet, is he going to deliver with that approach on the objectives as set out by statute? Or it is a show? Oscar, you can decide to shout at people or talking at them, or you can talk to them. So that's very, very important. Are you ready to talk at them, or you are ready to talk to them so that they listen? And it's okay, where is the problem? Sometimes it's a difference of opinion and so on. Let's go to the letter, Oscar. What was he raising in that letter to the CJ. One, about delayed judgments, because it is not explainable, whether legally or even by common sense, that a decision would be not made in the Supreme Court for 4 years. I mean, how do you explain it, whether to the lawyers or even to the litigants? And because you are talking about rights of individuals, of litigants, but at the same time, the Supreme Court is not a trial court. It's supposed to be setting standards for the entire judiciary. So if you delay the decision, you delay the standards. This issue about, for example, the recent one of the court martial. Trial civilians in the court martial. I mean, the Supreme Court should come out as soon as yesterday to guide the country. Because why do they allow us to indulge in a debate which they can close now? Because there is no apparent court after their decision. But now the whole country has been debating this for years and years. And we have judges seated in that place. We pay every month. And these days we pay quite handsomely.
They have a performance rate of less than 10%.
And yes, you know, there are things which cannot be explained. But the good thing about Chief Justice Winyidoro is, however much you are harsh to him, he will listen. He will listen. That one, you know, you can criticize him. He has a strong shock absorbers. He does that. What he can't tolerate is the insult. That one he can also withdraw, but the Chief Justice would have known for years, even before he became a judge. He's a strong character. He can absorb criticism, but he cannot tolerate insults. Yeah. So you don't have to insult him. Okay. And insulting, and that's maybe the biggest problem with some people, a section of those who call themselves activists. They think that is the way to do it, and I think it's not correct.
The Sydney, you know, Lydia and I once shared working activity, teaching English language and literature, and you know, insults are acceptable. Maybe there's a difference between insults and vulgarity. That's, as Abdu has pointed out. But I've gone into Google here, and I've even checked 55 Shakespearean insults and put downs. Quite a few. Sometimes even Abdu, I know he insults people, but in very good English or very good Lusoga. So,
thank you, Oscar. Well,
I think don't mistake a humor to be an insult. Sometimes I'm humorous.
Yes, the
sometimes
insults,
you can insult.
Yeah, insults take many forms. It could be through artistic depictions, it could be through use of words, it could be through hand gestures and many ways. So, yes, that is that.
John says here, if you go around insulting people, be sure they will insult you back.
But I think you make a very important distinction between insults and vulgarity. Because being vulgar is not tolerated anywhere in the world. There's no culture that will accept being vulgar, except maybe in certain settings that are private, but certainly not in public discourse. But apart from the
Uganda have a community called Abaswezi.
Yes, apart from the use of the vulgar words and the rest, there's also the disruptive activities. Because, for example, now, because of the confusion at the council, we have lost an opportunity to elect a member to the East African Law Society, because we're supposed to, Uganda is supposed to nominate a youth representative, but because the coup plotters had a certain nomination process, when these other ones reclaimed their seat, they threw it out and things out, and now the East African Law Society Election Committee has had to suspend the entire process. Now, those are the kinds of things we don't want to see as a society. Whatever you do should not harm the well-being of the society, of the council, and all its membership. For me, that's the cardinal thing. The way people choose to behave, it's like Mr. Musisi says, those who elected Mr. Semekade knew him from way before the elections, so maybe he's under pressure to maintain the same standard, because some people already say when he went to see our Chief Justice, they were saying instead of banging the table,
he's eating on the table.
He's now eating on the. He has betrayed them. Others already calling him a hypocrite. So maybe he's under pressure but like we all say, the way you campaign is not necessarily how you administer, especially public body. Yes.
You have been elected.
Yes.
You are not only a president of those who elected you.
Yes, precisely,
you're a president
precisely.
of even those who. So
yes.
you need to do a balancing act.
To balance. That's why
to accommodate
members
us.
accepted, even those who did not like the accept and said this is the fact. There will be other elections in 1 year's time. We maybe put forward a better case. But then when they see certain things happening, they're forced to come out of the cocoons and say, but wait a minute, this is not how. When former presidents come forward to say, look, this is not how. Because remember, one of the first activities that the council undertakes once new members have been elected is to call the former presidents to come and talk. Some kind of induction of the entire council. That was done. Then a few weeks later, the former presidents come and issue a very strong statement condemning the manner in which the society is being run. So that is a pointer to which people are not happy with the man. So it's not about the elections, it's just about how the society is now being run. You cannot have a situation within it's just over a month when there is a division. So like our senior Katuntu says,
they sound so sharp.
You not only serve those who are elected. In fact, in many cases, some people even go out of their way to accommodate those who did not vote for them, however few or many they might be. Yes.
John Walugembe, do you think all this drama at Uganda Law Society will affect business in Uganda, business in Kampala?
Yeah, definitely, because if you look at the backlog in courts of law, I personally have an issue in a court in Hoima there, and it's now 3 years. You know, you go, the magistrate is not there, this is not there. So those things have to change because it affects the cost of doing business, it affects the business environment, and one of the key indicators of a conducive business environment is the resolution of commercial disputes. And to the extent that they take long and you have convoluted court processes, it imposes a cost. You know, it imposes a cost on businesses, and I think the earlier that they are resolved, the better. And for me, I would say that, as I earlier mentioned, I think the president needs to rise above the campaign rhetoric and try to work on, because I mean, he's spending a year, you know, and a year is not a long time, you know, so you don't want to spend your year fighting. Today is the DPP, tomorrow is the other person. And I think what he did with the Chief Justice was a good way of doing things, and he should continue in that direction. Obviously, there are some younger lawyers, I would imagine, who just want to disrupt the system and think, you know, maybe it's time for revolution and so on. You can make change incrementally, and I think that's the best way he should.
He says there's no time for incrementally. But you know,
yeah,
you raise a very good
make
point.
Changes
Abdu here, who is a senior lawyer, a few years back, he couldn't find a judge for his case. So these things have been going on for quite a while.
Yeah, and sorry, before I get to him, you know, as businesses, many years, maybe 10 years ago, these are issues that we raised. They said, okay, we are going to set up a center for arbitration. We are going to work on the commercial court and stuff like that. But still, if you look at the turnaround time, it's not improved significantly. And if this continues, it will affect. Before an investor comes here, they must know, if I have a dispute, how soon will it be resolved? It's going to take 7 years, then they choose not to invest. So these are things we need to be mindful of.
And Oscar, I think I need to come in here. Over years, there has been real changes. First of all, structure changes to address the issue of backlog. One, we had even past president contributed to creating divisions within the High Court. This is a commercial court for purposes of that. Over years, the Uganda Law Society executives and the presidents have negotiated to have more judges. We've increased judges. Over years, they have negotiated to have very, very good pay. We have done that. So it's not that everything is just being done today over years, and those have achieved. Yeah. Do you know how many judges we have now? Even the other day we are amending the Judicial Act to increase the number of justices at the Court of Appeal. What we rejected was the Supreme Court. We said no, we don't want to bloat that, and that we strongly rejected it, much as that requested. So, do you know how, like now, every district has got a chief magistrate?
Yes.
Some time back, we had in the Busoga sub-region, there was only one chief magistrate in Jinja. The rest were G1s and so on. So we're also trying to address issues of jurisdiction, pecuniary jurisdiction. So all these you can achieve because the past executives have achieved a lot. But you know, sometimes if you shout, the people who are supposed to take a decision will close. And that's not the best.
They will switch off.
They just switch off.
Of course, I hear you, Honorable Abdu. I want to back on the point you raised that the Supreme Court, apart from being the highest court in the land, it's supposed to set standards, and I entirely agree with you. And of course, that is something that should not be lost. I think that is the core message in that letter. Mr. Olugembe here, who is not a lawyer, people, the only time
there's only two of us in the studio.
Yeah, the only time is when they interface with the system is when they are either dragged to court or when they are asserting their rights. He mentions his dispute in Hoima. We have a client who is a Ugandan professor in the US, had dreams of setting up a university in somewhere in the Hoima region, and government mandatorily took over his land, which is within the law. However, the law says you're supposed to compensate prior. It's been 5 years. He even had to go to court. Even the court has not handled the dispute for over 4 years now. You can imagine, government is using the land. He hasn't got the money. He didn't, and he basically they're not going to compensate for these 5, 6, 7 years. So the question
he had good intentions.
Yes, of setting standards that, according to the annual performance report by the judiciary, the Supreme Court performed at, I think, 8%. So what standards are you sending? So those are some of the issues that should be listened to. When we talk about constitutional appeals, why we single them out, Oscar, is because the Constitutional Court has decided that this such and such an act or law is unconstitutional. So one party, most probably the Attorney General, is dissatisfied and you let that matter rest for 4 or 5 years. Yes, I know that they've had issues. They've had judges dying in the last 3 or 4 years. But then again, under our laws, judicial power is supposed to be exercised in accordance with people's aspirations. That should be the driving force, that how fast do you respond to the people's needs? Because now, for instance, the issue of the civilians in court martials, just imagine if the Supreme Court tomorrow decided that, agreed with the lower court, that it's unconstitutional. What's going to happen to the people who are getting convictions, who are getting custodial sentences? How are we going to compensate them? So the key issues that we should not lose in the tone and the packaging as that the real issues. But yes, I agree to the extent that it has to be a balancing act of how do you ensure that your message is not lost in the style.
Lydia, how do we close out this subject and your expectations?
No, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We have 17th December, and the communication between the President of the Law Society and the CJ is encouraging, and that's the top. So if it can trickle down to other aspects, I think the MCCs are our ambassadors to help us realize the difference between being firm, fearless, and courageous, away from being insulting and vulgar. We will be home and dry. Thank you.
Okay, Oscar, sorry to... You see, I'm also worried about 17th. I hope it doesn't degenerate into our street politics. Because from what has gone on, we need to go for that meeting and discuss issues soberly. And they come to a decision one way or the other. But if we go there and then we start shouting at each other, creating news, social media stories, then it will not help. So I appeal to colleagues, those learned friends of mine who could be listening, that when you go for that meeting, let us discuss, at least let us be the lawyers we are, or what the lawyers people expect us to be. and there are issues which we should resolve. We don't want to come out of that meeting when we've now created again other issues. So I'm a little bit worried. I hope I'll have that pleasant surprise that we go there and resolve issues. We don't go there creating more issues and more problems.
Yeah, but talk is good.
Absolutely.
Yes, talk is good, but if you look at the agenda of the EGM for 17th, I have little room for optimism, because the first item on the agenda is discussion of the expulsion. Now this time they have been suspended, but this time there is expulsion of the two members, and then the next item is election of members to the Judicial Service Commission. Now the Judicial Service Commission, first of all, the manner in which the current members have allegedly been also, I don't know, they're expelled, or because they are still serving. But there was a letter to the Judicial Service Commission saying that these two members have been withdrawn, have been recalled. So item number 2 is supposed to be for election of members to replace them. All these are very contentious issues, because much as the other ones are soon leaving, I think their tenure is ending sometime end of the year, early next year. Now, the manner in which their recall has been handled, and although the manner of replacement is, we agree.
I want to ask, one, the election of members of the JC, is it about arising from the recall or from end of their tenure?
End of the tenure.
Well, I don't know. because what we have seen, it's not communicated.
Because that's quite crucial. If it is the end of tenure,
yes,
that's another issue.
Yes.
But if it is about being recalled,
yes,
that is very contentious, and it can only be resolved by a court of law.
What has been seen in the public domain is the rate of recall. Now, there's been no clarification about whether this is about end of tenure. Now, if it was about end of tenure, we all agreed that electing is the best way, because there's a court decision that members should be elected, not only to the Judicial Service Commission, but all other bodies where representation from the society is required. But of course, it raises the issue then, why only the JSC? Why not all these other organizations to which we're supposed to elect
Sydney, I think the others, the tenure has not yet lapsed.
So are we now saying that...
Because the court judgment was that the status quo remains until... yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Right.
That implies that the recall couldn't have stood in law.
John, we have a rare moment in which we have 4 lawyers and we conclude a topic on which they have all agreed. This is a super capital gang. But
before we take leave of this matter, let me put a difference of opinion.
but there's a book I want to buy for Abdul Katunti. You might share it. It's you read the title there, Abdul, and then we change topics.
No, I will not read this title. Oscar, read your own title. I'm not going to read that title.
George could read the title.
My eyesight can't see.
And Sidney has left his glasses behind also.
I can't see without my
the book.
I haven't seen. Let me.
Well, I should tell the listeners the book I'm going to buy for Abdul from Amazon is Lawyers and Other Reptiles. All of them, they can't see the title.
So, and other reptiles.
Yes. It's
a reptile leader.
Yes.
A she reptile.
Let's stop for a quick break.
I don't know.
And after the break, we will go into matters financial. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang and Money Matters. In 1 week, John Marugembe, it's kind of a scary week.
Yes.
Theft of money.
Yes.
And these are big monies.
Yes.
Last week, someone was shot dead. May his soul rest in eternal peace. And now reports of Bank of Uganda, something happened a little while ago, but also fake money in a government bank. So, John, what's happening in your sector?
Okay, so first of all, I'll give a small background with regard to the role, because if we want to assess the impact, we must appreciate what the role for the central bank is. Of course, it was established in 1966. After the Second World War, the US helped to establish central banks in different countries. Initially, they had broad mandates. For instance, the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate to create price stability and to create maximum employment. Now that has narrowed. With central bank independence, the focus is pretty much on price stability. Of course, they have other auxiliary roles, but they don't have as much of a role in full employment creation and growth as they once had. Now, in our case, the central bank is a banker to government. It supervises financial institutions. It manages foreign reserves. It maintains price stability, which is its primary role, and it maintains macroeconomic stability. So in a free market economy, these are very important tasks. And because the central bank is independent and because it uses indirect tools for monetary policy control, trust and credibility are central to the whole system in maintaining trust in the system. So if you get a story that $17 million has been siphoned off, 10 million to Japan, 7 million to the UK. Thankfully, the 7 million has been recovered in the UK. The one in Japan was withdrawn, and the Japanese government did not move fast enough to ensure that money was not withdrawn by a shadowy group called West. Then it raises all kinds of issues, more so in an area where the central bank is championing digitalization. They're asking financial institutions, they're asking other financial service providers to go online, to go digital. Now, if you go digital and you have not put in place robust cyber security frameworks, then you're at risk. And if you look at central banks in developing countries, they are at risk. For instance, but not even just developing countries. For instance, the IMF in February this year had an incident themselves. The Central Bank of Bangladesh, I think they stole $1 billion. So these groups are becoming more sophisticated, and they're targeting the financial sector because they know they can go away with huge sums of money. But then there is also an issue of some kind of insider work, because for me this one looks more of an insider kind of thing. It did not, the investigators are investigating and so on and so forth, but it appears that there was a certain level of cooperation from within the bank. So it's a risk to the broader sector. It's a risk to the it leads to loss of confidence in the financial sector. It undermines macroeconomic stability, because people who want to bring offshore investors want to come and invest and so on and so forth. They wonder whether we have the necessary frameworks. And then, of course, the interconnectedness makes us more vulnerable to such attacks, not just now, but going forward. But I also want to mention that the central bank itself, because with an independent central bank, and people try to confuse independence with lack of accountability. Yes, you can't be independent, but you ought to be accountable. You ought to be transparent. And I don't think they've communicated well with regard to this issue. They should have come out at the first incident and said, we have ABCD problem, we are resolving it.
Should they?
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important because it shows trust. It's a trust issue. But if you seem to hide information and then
to leave it to anybody,
yes, and then parliamentarians ask the minister saying, well, it's under investigation, I'm not privy, and then all these things are circulating online. Yeah. You're not serious. And for me, I think the central bank has to do a better job, and not just. This is just one incident. For instance, we have a financial institution that they say, oh, he's exiting and so on. Come out, be the one to share. These people who are banking with this financial institution must be able to make their own decisions, Yeah. So that lack of transparency on the part of the central bank.
Chigo thinkers, we talked about mercantile bank and refunds of depositors. that's hanging. There was an Abdul Katuntu report as well on how to present information and so on. So you wish that they come out and speak immediately?
No, in the central bank, in an era of a central bank that's independent and that relies on market forces and confidence in the stability of the financial sector, you have to be transparent. Of course, you can't communicate everything, but you must appear to be open and transparent. And that's why, for instance, central banks, when they are setting the CBR, they are required to communicate publicly. Otherwise, they'll just sit in boardrooms and just increase or reduce. But the requirement is that you communicate publicly so that the market gets a signal. If you're raising the CBR, then they know you're tackling inflation, and therefore they can make their own projections based on where you're going. So I would say in this regard, they have not been as open as they should.
As they should be. Well, we've also complained. We have a money man in the studio anyway, but a lot of lawyers are listening. Former President Gimara tells you, good morning, gang. The election of GSC members aligns with end of their tenure. It is not a recall. Dan asks you, is it learned friends or land friends? And then Sam says, what a super gang. Lawyers agree.
That's I wanted to disagree somehow. You didn't give it.
And as you were about to disagree, I found you this book, which has kept you quiet.
So is he a reptile?
So Oscar, even in every civil dispute,
so is he a reptile?
Lawyers first agree on some issues.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, John Walugembe talks about the central bank, but let me ask for you, who's been ahead of Financial Intelligence Authority, how do fake bank notes end in a bank vault? If you were still in that job, what would you be doing?
Thank you, Oscar. Now, just to take a minute before I answer that, in response to what John has said, I agree with him in terms of the accountability of the central bank. For example, in the example you have just cited, it's Post Bank itself that made this information public. Because in the process of their normal audit, they discovered this money. So it's not as if someone else or from the public or the police or other law enforcement agencies landed on these fake notes. It is with themselves that came up with this information, and then they made it public, and then they took steps to address the problem, including suspending those who should have known what was happening, and then also handing over the actual perpetrators to police in Mbale. Now, the question as to whether the central bank should have done the same or not is quite different, because actions or statements issued by the central bank have a more far-reaching impact. But what I can say is that the way the payment system is designed, and with this I agree with John, the way it is designed, it cannot have gone through without a human element participating actively in this process, because they are, as opposed to a hack, because if it's a hack, then that means it is purely external. Now, the way the system is designed, it is designed to overcome hacks, because there are various approvers, there are various stages in which somebody must act. And we all know, especially when you do fraud, that however well the system is designed, it can be beaten by the humans who are supposed to manage it. So in this case, I think it is more a case of people who are supposed to play certain roles to safeguard going rogue. Now the question is, at what point did this happen? Because it could be at point of initiation, it could be at point of approval, it could be point of then payment. Because for the case in Japan, the reason why the Japanese bank refused to effect the hold, because some of the money had already gone out, is because they're saying those that have been paid have presented solid documents to them to show that they did work. Meaning that whoever initiated the payment was claiming that the money is being initiated for a particular purpose, which has been for payment. So there must have been collusion. Now the question is, at what point should the central bank have come out? Because up to now, I don't think there is a very clear statement that has been made, other than the statements issued by the minister in Parliament in response to pressure from the parliamentarians, but not a public statement for the rest of us, the citizens. Now, obviously, now coming to the Mbali, as I've already said, it is the Post Bank itself that took steps to identify and in a bid to, because they knew eventually this information would be in public. So they took steps to ensure that they are the ones who control the narrative by making it public, by indicating the steps they have taken, which means that their systems are actually working. The fact that the audit could discover and then take steps is actually positive for the bank, for which they should be applauded. And I think they have also taken the relevant steps that need to be addressed to regain the public, the confidence of the public. Now, as to how this happened is really a mystery, because that's what criminals do. They look at the system, they evade the system, but like we all say, those in criminology, that prevention of crimes in certain circumstances is very hard. But the next best thing is to make sure that those who commit crimes are identified and are appropriately punished. So in this case, that would be for me, now that the crime has happened, the good thing it has been identified, they should be properly investigated and appropriately punished. Yes.
And prevention of future crime?
Prevention of future crime, of course.
If you have two hacks, you have a hack and then fake money, that 500 million must be a lot of money.
You know, if it were possible to prevent crime, then it will be utopia. Because we have strong laws, but there are certain crimes that will never be done away with. You have sexual offenses, you have murder, you have rape, you have robberies, you have frauds. These are facts of life. You can never wish them away. But the next best thing is to make sure that we have systems in place to identify, first of all, to criminalize that behavior, then systems in place to identify and then appropriately punish.
But Sydney, how bulky is 500 million?
No, it's not as bulky as you may think.
Really?
Yes, because if you have 50,000 shilling notes, you don't need don't need a very big vault. Yes, you don't need a very big vault. You could move it.
I don't know those things.
Move with 100 million, if you have, especially if you have the big notes. So you don't need a very big vault. But remember, if somebody's committed crime, they actually go out of their way to ensure that they're not detected. So it's not like people are making this money lie for easy identification. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. George Musi, the Bank of Uganda aside, Post Bank aside, what about theft? I mean, are we bracing ourselves for a very difficult December?
Of course, like it always happens, there's a tendency. Happens. Yes, there's always a tendency for crime to increase, even petty crime, like burglaries, towards the festive season. And I would like to take it up from where Sydney mentioned that every society indeed has criminals, or will always have. What changes society from society is.
We trade.
I don't know whether Oscar is the one who co-authored that book of against lawyers.
The one of reptiles.
Yes.
Among the 10 in this room, one has already committed a crime today.
Yes.
Of a different nature. No?
So what stops the safeguards always are that what safeguards are there, or what risk do I take? If I do this, will I be punished? That is usually the key difference. You find that in societies like Uganda, where some people think that if I do this, I might get away with it, either through the bribing my way out of the system or fearing to be caught. That is what lowers the risk of people committing the crimes. And I agree also entirely with Mr. Olugembe when he says that Bank of Uganda owes the public an explanation. And we know that for a long time, I followed Honorable Katuntu's probe into Bank of Uganda a couple of years ago. And remember, there were also contestations of people saying you cannot question some of these things because they want to be shrouded in mystery, akin to the Vatican. That because of the nature of this bank, because it affects financial stability, you cannot drag them. And I remember some people even wanted a closed process. But when it came out, eventually we always thought that Bank of Uganda is the epitome of excellence. We saw that there were gaps. There were not just gaps, rot. There was rot. Gaps is to put it very mildly. I hope I'm not stretching the language.
I'm not on the same academic executive.
Neither am I. But the chair is here. He used the worst words in the report. So the issue that
stronger words.
Stronger words. That it also now needs to mind, especially now mindful of the social media, that if you leave an information gap, there are all sorts of speculations. We're seeing speculations in the newspapers. Now people are talking about that there's a possibility of an inside job. So how far it's also important for its own image that it's purporting to protect, to ensure that that statement would go along when saying that no, this as we may not issue a conclusive one as what resulted, but to show that you're not being caught on the back end. Otherwise, you leave room to speculation. So I think that in this day and age, BOU has to adapt to some of the working methods that they cannot continue operating like the Vatican. Then secondly, the mere fact that this happened, these acts can happen everywhere, but now you are saying that they could have been an inside job. So that goes back to the question, ask me the issue of theft and how far will you go to ensure that that doesn't happen again? It will depend on how swift and efficiently the investigations are done and whether appropriate punishment is meted out, or it may not be punishment but people taking responsibility, because sometimes taking responsibility, you may not be the person who committed the crime, but maybe you failed by your duty and supervision.
Abdul. Money matters.
You see, the entire world has moved digital. And now we have plastic money, we have air money, which just transmitted, digitally. And as you see, the more we go digital, the more risk for cybercrime. Why? Because it's not very easy now to come and do a bank robbery. These days, that you come break in a bank and carry billions of money is literally impossible. So the bad boys and girls of community, of society now, must find a way of also upping their act. And they just go on their computers and steal billions. And that's what has happened, first of all, is not strange. It's happening the world all over. I blame BOU for one reason. Because there is a fiduciary relationship between them and us. That's not Bank of Uganda money. It's people's money. And if people's money has been stolen, you have to reach out and say, by the way, we are the trustee, but something wrong has happened with the resources which we are supposed to be keeping for you. So the statement should have been there, official statement. As to the content, that's another matter, because you don't also want to jeopardize investigation. But to come out clearly with an official statement, then the people know that there is a problem here, and some of them actually could have some information which can help in investigation. Oscar, everybody managing resources should now know you need to have safeguards of your systems. Everybody. Because you see, that is the options are not now many for thieves. They get just the number, just getting your PIN number, and they manipulate it and money leaves. You remember a few years ago, I got so much concerned about the mobile money platform because there was no law. I even took an initiative to go to court. The money at the mobile money platform was almost 5 times of all the money in the banks combined.
That's true.
But there was no legal framework for it. And let me tell you, I had to rescue this country, because if I hadn't done that, and anything happened to either MTN or Airtel and so on, what would have happened? It would be a financial crisis in this country. The service was good, but without a legal framework, without safeguards. So eventually they took it up and we enacted the payment system law, where it is now covered and so on, with all the safeguards and so on, the insurance you need and so on. So I think either all banks and other financial institutions take note of this, especially the central bank. At the risk of sounding to know more than I do, it is not the first time.
It is not comforting. the David Busing here, Lydia, as you're coming on, Kawagam says billions.
The reptile.
From BOU, a billion is stolen by security guards. 500 million discovered in a straw, all in 1 week. What does this reflect? This is on X, formerly Twitter. So, Lydia.
Oscar, the cybercrime, especially in the financial sector, is real. Some young, sharp, talented people, even old experts, have learned how to manage this telecommunication, the revolution of the IT. And by just they don't need they just need a computer, sit somewhere quietly, and their wires work. They don't need a bullion van, they don't need any fight. It's just on the desk and the lines are banged and money comes out. In some of these countries, in our neighbors, where Honorable Katuntu is a frequent neighbor, there was a young man at a university in the Department of IT with their 2 other friends. They neatly went into the payroll of members of parliament and fixed like 3 more payments in the emoluments, and they were paid. It was discovered after 3 years. Parliament, through Ministry of Finance, was wiring money. And these were under 35. I don't know if Katuntu picked that story. Yes, on the payroll of parliament. So they were aligned as like members of parliament, and they earned emoluments for 3 years. So in the 4th year,
it was an inside job.
When they were preparing to go for elections, they are looking at which constituency. That's when these payments were discovered. So for Uganda, due diligence is important, but like my colleagues have said, payments go through systems. There are those people whose biometric that trigger must first of all happen, then to goes. Yes. That biometric can only be held by one person. So by now we should have heard that some people have been arrested or they have been taken for questioning. Because where did your biometric? Because even if nobody, according to science, shares a biometric, yes. Nobody. You remember the story of Ukazinda. The PS at that time of PM's office, the same story, had to say that for him it was a whistleblower. So we wait for investigations whether the system has been bypassed, whether there was
there are so many stages one will have to bypass. If you bypass one,
whatever it is,
safeguards in the next one.
Common sense tells us there must be an inside job.
Yes.
So you can jump Katuntu, but surely Sydney's biometric must be, caught, or the same way maybe Mosisi, who is a lawyer for these people, the reptiles also. So, what does this tell us to do? Is I think the byline is to be vigilant. You must be vigilant every day. That's why some people go and reconcile. There's that daily reconciliation, or every hour reconciliation. What is money leaving, money entering, money leaving? There must be that vigilance. If you don't do vigilance, definitely you'll be a victim of cybercrime.
But Oscar, there's another issue which
and then in the evening when you log
that vigilance of checking and reconciling is very, very important.
I was thinking about this week, that every institution must have also a substantive head.
So Bank of Uganda does not have a governor.
It must have a substantive head. And
so the back ends with the head of the institution.
Sometimes when you lack that, there's a lot of uncertainty on 1 or 2 issues. What to talk about,
you can call them
effective
lapses,
controls and so on. So it's not
people
like
are still on the edge of the chair.
Okay, now things are moving. Because of lack of a head, you will have problems like this sometimes happening.
So we should expect an appointment of the Bank of Uganda governor this week, so that we have.
Lydia, you're the one. You're a member of SEC.
Does SEC appoint governors really? But I wanted to ask Katuntu though. Katuntu, the Kosase report. Oscar, just give this to me. The Kosase report was comprehensive. Has there been any effort to make those amendments you proposed for the bank?
They've done a lot of reforms.
Amendments.
They have redone a lot of reforms.
Because that was so,
and they have consulted. sometimes they've come and said, by the way, there was this. What made you take this decision, or what formed your decision? And we've given them that information, and they have done their best, and they have restructured a few things at Bank of Uganda. They have.
Let's have a quick comment.
So we hope that the appointment
John
of the leadership
conclude.
will come soon,
Yeah.
so that the bank ends, the accountability ends with the head of the institution.
Very quick one. Yes, yes, I agree with Honorable Katun to that. How serious does the appointing authority himself take these institutions that a Bank of Uganda can be for this long? One time, as Judicial, we had an acting CJ and who was at the same time the acting DCJ for over 2 years. But then secondly, it all goes back to, if you read reports from COSASE, from Auditor General, there is a general malaise, institutional malaise, that people think that you can do something and go with it. So, which is accountability at the bottom of it all, that how strongly do public institutions think that they have to account. That is because it's also naive to imagine that Bank of Uganda will be an oasis of efficiency amidst a sea of dead institutions.
Abdul, I should tell you, George is a future politician. So when you are talking about activists that use bad language, he's not one of them. He's a future politician.
There are many activists who don't use who use good language. They communicate. Because activism is not all that negative.
Yeah. John Morgan, you have a past lead of the FIA, Financial Intelligence Authority.
Yes.
You have Georgia, who works with...
It sounded more like a CIA.
they also have to do that.
But Oscar, can Sydney maybe at some time tell us the gravity of the cybercrime, at least in Uganda? That's classified information. It's a serious issue.
But let me ask John, then I'll come back to you. Now that Lydia has asked a question of you. But John, you know, be careful with your man. How careful can you be?
You can just disappear from.
So I think
these things are trust issues.
I think first of all we must invest in very serious cyber security protocols. In some of these institutions, they are holding a lot of money and they have very small IT departments with young people who are not well compensated. This is a recipe for disaster. So I think we need to prioritize issues of cybersecurity. For Bank of Uganda, more so because it's a supervisor of financial institutions. If you're a supervisor and you yourself are unable to have the necessary safeguards and the necessary risk mitigation mechanisms, then you cannot roll it over, or you cannot demand financial institutions to adopt the same. So BOU, as a matter of urgency, needs to ensure that these things are handled. Then I would also agree with Honorable Katuntu on the issue.
They are supposed to be checking on what the systems of the commercial banks.
Exactly.
But if yours is
it's not working.
Exactly. So
if yours is vulnerable, how will those that you're
you encourage bad practices in the industry, and there's something called a data penetration test, which Bank of Uganda itself should be going through. What you do is that you actually hire hackers and they try to hack into your system.
Yes.
Okay. You hire them, they hack into your system to test, just like they do stress tests for financial institutions. They should do the same for ICT systems. So I think that's something
like you do a road test for a vehicle you have come from the garage.
Exactly. Then the issue of a substantive governor is something. The issue of a substantive governor is something that is of concern to us, and I think we should all appeal to His Excellency to appoint someone, good or bad. Let him make that decision, so that we see.
Even just in this studio,
because there was
Cindy is a candidate who can be a good governor.
There was.
We're sending cases here.
The worst decision is the failure to make a decision. So it's good that you make a decision, and then you can assess whether it's good or bad. And then the other issue is that BOU should also look at these third-party providers of ITC services, because they also present vulnerabilities. If you look at most of the financial institutions whose systems have been hacked into, the gateway has been through third-party providers and collusion from staff. And I would want to say and put it on record that in this case, without jeopardizing investigations. I believe, and I'm using that statement, I believe that there was internal collusion because, just like you mentioned, all the systems of approval were properly followed, you know. So, and that's why some of these institutions were not. And then finally, we need to ensure that we improve confidence in the financial sector through better communication and through better addressing of issues. If you have an incident and you say we are going to follow a court process, after it's concluded, then come back to the public and let them know what
I have someone complaining, Marco on X, formerly Twitter, says a topic heavy on cybercrime, and there was no technology resource for Capital Gang. Hearing people talk, connecting wires on the program is just underwhelming. So, Marco, you have no respect for the immediate past head of the FIA? Come on, Marco. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang, last show of November. Sydney, Subo, let me give you a couple of minutes to respond to Lydia. And also my question to John, what should we be doing now before we close out this topic?
Thank you, Oscar. Now, I think we should distinguish the systems that are said to be vulnerable here, because the system we're talking about is called the Integrated Financial Management System. It is the payment system that government of Uganda uses, both at the central government and at the local government. And it's also a system that is used by many other countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a system that is reliable. But like I said earlier, any system is vulnerable to the human beings that control it. So as long as you have a human-machine interface, if the human is compromised, if there's a lack of integrity in the human, then the system, however well designed it is, will be vulnerable, because there has to be someone who initiates the payment, then someone who approves the payment, and then there's the supervisor of the approval, and then there's the last person, the one who authorizes the payment, and yes, and these are at different positions, because one is at the ministry where the money is coming from, and then the other one is the one that initiates is at the ministerial department. Then the two in the middle are the Ministry of Finance. And then the last one is the one one is at the Ministry of Finance, in particular the Accountant General's office, and then the final one is at the central bank. So it cannot be that a hacker can compromise all these systems without a detection. And the way the system is designed, by the way, it is so fast. A payment can be initiated if everyone is on they don't have to be on their desk. They can approve from wherever they are, as long as they have machines with the right credentials. It can be done within, even within 10 minutes. A payment can be initiated and paid. But government took a decision to slow down the system deliberately so that people are given time to breathe. Because and this was from previous experience where money had been wired. Because the system is so efficient, money had been wired previously to other countries, but in a similar style to this one. But it was good before it went out. So the decision was taken to slow down the system, so that at least it takes a day or two, so that if there's anything, then it can be discovered. So for me, the greater question to be pondered is how come this happened and it was not discovered immediately, and that's why it points to more to do with being an insider job than a hacking job, which brings us to the prevalence of cyber crimes in this country now. There are a number of reports issued by different law enforcement agencies, especially the police, ourselves, not ourselves, but FIA, yes, and other agencies that deal with cyber crimes, including the intelligence. So it's very prevalent. Obviously, with advancement in technologies, there are also all these vulnerabilities. And as you know, as people are designing these systems, payment systems and other financial systems, accounting systems, there are those who are also working very hard to see how to defeat this system. So that is why, with this advancement in technologies, especially the payment systems, because we have the different kinds of players. We have the aggregators, We have those who then the banks, the payment options themselves. Then we have so many financial technologies, the fintechs. So with increase in these advancements, there's obviously increase in financial in cyber crimes. But the good thing is that we also have robust laws, we have robust systems in place. But it all comes down to human nature, the nature that we're inherently born with, trying to beat systems and trying to commit crime, and that is, I think, cybercrime is one of those that is fastest growing in the country. But there have also been robust responses to the same. But this is an ongoing, it's like the fight between Walumbe and Kaikuzi. As people are being born, others must die. So, yes, that's what I can say. Yes.
Oscar. Yes. You see, it is true. Bank of Uganda has been on top of its game in terms of monetary policy and so on. They've done quite a pretty good job. But at the same time, there have been weaknesses in that bank also. And a few years ago, that bank was really divided up. There were internal fights and so on, undermining each other and camps because everybody wanted to ascend to what position and so on. And when you have that sort of environment, you create, people who will be trying to say, well, if this one's holding this office and I do this, it will hit him hard and so on. So you need proper authority at management level. I remember saying at that time, when we were doing the probe of that central bank, that if it was a commercial bank, it would have been closed. Because there are things which nobody would have accepted. It would have been closed. Because everything that can go wrong went wrong. And if it was a commercial bank, there is no way Bank of Uganda would have remained open. That you close one bank, you don't account, you go for another one, you don't account, you go for another one. And accounting means you've taken over assets and liabilities of a commercial bank. And as I talk now, they have not accounted for a single bank they closed, not even a single one. So circumstances like that and lack of effective leadership and somebody who would be accountable either to the appointing authority or even to the people whose money is being kept by. Let me tell you, you don't have these sort of problems.
As I told you, mercantile people are agitating.
Yes.
Go on, sorry, conclude.
So to me, the president should appoint a substantive governor. Please, those who are listening and they are close to him, please tell him who else could I have?
Sick. Liz in Kampala sends a headline from New Vision, Thursday paper, 22,000 IDs in wrong hands. Can you imagine that? This was in the government newspaper. And John Walugembe people, you should be pleased. Han says, John Walugembe, the submission of this fellow deserves accolades. Should appoint him governor of BOU.
The SMEs will be crying.
Yes. Back to you, George Musi, on to the final topic of gang. People have been posting things. And I don't know, you lawyers, you're going to have real issues now with the Dr. Kiza Besigye case. People post a thing, I have analyzed this audio. How when people post things like that, and it's all over social media, as if there's some guru saying, I have analyzed this audio, and this one says 98% accurate, the other one says 87.
Of course, one thing we always tell our colleagues in the...
We come back to 4 lawyers in a studio. How will you...
In the security corps, is that there's a difference between intelligence and evidence. What we call evidence is a matter of law. Intelligence can be anything, including rumors, including doctored things. I have represented a number of people in the General Court Martial, And one of the reasons why we have problems with civilians being tried there, or any other issue there, or any other people, is that sometimes the threshold of evidence seems to be lower than the ordinary standard known to the law. For starters, if you have such I want to call it a highly sensitive matter, or like saying Dr. Kizza Besigye was plotting to undermine Uganda's security in Geneva, and why would it be on social media in the first place? Why would any intelligence officer or prosecutor, for that matter, let such a high sensitive piece of evidence, quote unquote, be on social media before even in law there's what we call disclosure, to tell the state tells the defense that this is what we are going to rely on, this is the evidence we're going to rely on. So it tends to point fingers to the speculation that it's fake, it's meant to be a red herring, meant to or prosecute the case in the public court, to form an opinion already, like people are already making, that some are those who we're living in a polarized society, those who believe in it are the ones who are giving the layers of authenticity, then those who are not are dismissing it off. So for me, I want to push it to that one. I don't think that any serious prosecutor would let such a serious piece of evidence be seen on social media.
Run around on social media. And I would want to imagine, I don't have the capacity to ascertain but I'm just looking at the circumstantial factors around it to imagine that it may not be for purposes of an evidential value. It may be for purposes of bringing evidence in the public opinion court, which it already is doing. Yeah. So for me, the bigger issue is we earlier talked about not losing track that the question of trial of civilians in court martials is something that needs to be settled. Like, to use Abdul's words, as early as yesterday. We have 2 constitutional court judgments, Oscar, in the last 4 years, pronouncing themselves very strongly and even using hard words that the files involving civilians should be immediately transferred to the ordinary court. So, of course, the Attorney General was granted a stay by the Supreme Court, a stay of execution, meaning that the status quo can remain, which I found also quite uncomfortable. But the Supreme Court undertook to ensure that this judgment is delivered as early as possible. So, in the first place, why would you charge someone who is uncomfortable with being in that forum? The essence of justice is that you are tried, if what they call fair hearing, where you feel that you get justice, including where they are at par. So I want to look at those audios which are seen on social media in that same line, that it's an attempt to prosecute the case through the public eyes. Sydney Asubo, you are the former head of financial intelligence. When on social media says, I have analyzed. My view is that if the recordings are, who writes those things and who is the I have analyzed? When you first see it, you think it's genuine until you see it is all over WhatsApp.
Now, what I will do is to draw a distinction between financial intelligence and the other forms of intelligence.
And the gun intelligence.
External security and internal security. Those ones are very distinct.
From the money, financial.
Is the threshold lower?
So my expertise.
You are part of the intelligence community.
is on financial. But what I'll say is that I will agree that this kind of information should not be in the public domain. True or false is not really for me the debate. The debate is how did it even get into the public?
You've said that.
Into the public domain,
and
not only because of the seriousness of the charges, but for any crime, because evidence is supposed to be treated in a certain way. Even the way you handle that evidence determines whether it will be admissible in a court of law or not, because there are rules around how evidence, especially of that nature, can be handled. And these days, and I've seen decisions of courts where they're very, very careful when they handle evidence of that nature. There is an ongoing court case, the Anti-Corruption Court, where recordings have become a critical aspect of that trial. And many observers are of the view that this case will rise or fall on that on the admissibility of that evidence. Now, questions have been raised around how it was handled, the chain of evidence and things, and so on and so forth. So, for me, my concern will be in this in that regard. But how is this evidence being handled? How is it authentic? And even if it were authentic, for argument's sake, how is the manner in which it is handled will also determine whether it will be admissible or not. So, that for me, those are the areas that will be of interest to me. Yes.
Abdul, I know you didn't author those ones saying, I have analyzed.
I have my own
issues with social media.
Yes. So, but let me say this. I don't think what appears on social media is evidence for purposes of persecution. No. That is purely public relations and politics. And that's where it ends. Because you see, an average lawyer would know that this is not the sort of evidence you now come and present in a court. Whoever leaked it didn't want that evidence to be used in court. So why did he leak it? For purposes of public consumption, politics, and justification maybe of why they were holding somebody. So you see, I had a short stint at the Directorate of Public Prosecution then as a state attorney. And a criminal law, the standard of proof is very, very high. Actually, it requires proof beyond reasonable doubt. And then the burden is by the prosecutor. You even don't have to say anything. You is being accused. To carry that burden to that standard is not a very easy job. It isn't. And there is a problem between the court martial and our orthodox courts. One time when General Tumwine was sharing the let his soul rest in peace, I gave him one of my books by Glanville Williams, Learning the Law. Because I went there at that time as one of the lawyers for General Tumukunde. And what was going on, I didn't understand. It was not like a court. So the following day I carried that book. You know, we used to get those books, you and Oscar. We still had the book allowances at the university. I would got the book bank and it picks those law books. I don't know when my brother here, when he went to university, you had that.
No, they had the photocopied materials. These ones are for photocopy.
That book is basically basic of the law. So I donated to General Truman. I said, please at least read this.
Basics.
And then he told me one thing. He said, look here, this is the army, it's not a court. That's what he told me. This is the army. So this thing of thank you, but don't think it will guide me so much. We have our own rules. So to me, if it was an orthodox court, I don't think somebody would be very anxious, a serious prosecutor, to take that sort of evidence to court, whether it is authentic or it is not. And even if it was authentic, then he has undermined his credibility by it being a public document, or I don't know whether it's a document or evidence. There is no way to prove it at all. There is no way. And we go back to appeal to Chief Justice Alfonso Winyidolo that he should he should bring this conversation to an end, really.
Lydia?
You see, in all these matters, we also have what people call the overzealous. we began this debate today by talking about activists, but we also have overzealous people. But then these overzealous people spoil. They spoil. They may not know that they are spoiling. So these social media issues you are talking about and those who are saying they have scrutinized beyond their own reasonable doubt, they are spoiling maybe it would have been a good piece of evidence, or they are spoiling a case, because at the end of the day, courts do not use what's in the social media. They use facts as presented in a particular designated forum. So that cannot really count. But like everybody else has said, the buck ends with the head of where people want to get justice. So I hope that the Chief Justice has heard and also has read, because he has been written to formally, but there's a lot of cries in many forums. Let him come out with his team and they decide on this matter decisively and in line with the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, so that everybody gets their day in court and you go home knowing whether you are going to serve or you have been freed. Where we are now, it's really not a very good thing for the Ugandans. Yeah.
John, in the commercial world as well, social media can be a menace.
Yeah. No, I think generally as a country we should all, and I'm speaking as people are running businesses, we want positive news coming out about Uganda. Every time we have a negative news, it makes people reconsider very many things about this country. And when investors come and bring money, when people choose to partner with local businesses, it helps the economy as a whole. So any kind of negative news like this one, because for me the bigger question would be deportation vis-a-vis extradition, and did we follow the rules, and then if we didn't follow the rules in the first place, and so on. So we must give a picture of the rule of law, and I would say that as a country, let's ensure that we promote. If there's something that you want to do that you think may not reflect well on their country and bring us more money and create jobs, then maybe these are things that one can always reconsider. Yeah.
Well, short, succinct response.
Why is Standard Chartered closing?
No, I think the issue is that
at
what you have
6 minutes to the end of it.
No, it's a very simple. Every bank has its own niche, and at some point they may find that a certain segment is not profitable. They are staying and they are focusing on the corporate clients and so on, but they're getting out of the retail. There's more competition actually. It may actually mean a good thing. It may mean that local firms have now been able to chip away at.
Okay, so local banks can take up what the Standard Chartered Bank was handling.
Exactly, and then you may find that circles, because if you look
banks you are talking about,
we have for Uganda
not banks necessarily,
commercial banks.
If you look at how many the circles and how people are saving through circles,
you just talked about your
Operas just said
mobile money.
Kakaire says Walugembe hired influencers for his appointment to bank.
They are saying good things
no,
about
I've not applied. I've not expressed it.
Maybe Lydia is one of the influencers.
The influencers. Okay, I have heard.
I'll give Sydney Asubo last word on gang. I don't know how many other people.
No, you're talking about the banks first.
Okay.
The closure is, I don't know whether it's closure or
they're just selling that.
They are selling. First of all, it is normal for banks to do what to sell and so on. That happens and so on. They reorganize. Barclays did it.
Nile Bank.
Yes, but Nile Bank had a little bit of problems and so on. But this is about business strategy, and if an investor in this sector, you need to know who are your clients. Are you going for smaller savers, the circles of the Musisi's and Katuntus of this world, or are you going for the big fellows like the Lydia corporates who have big monies? Citibank operates from here, but I'm telling you, they don't have the sort of walk in and out clients. I'm sure Sidi knows this very well. So this is normal. And I thought if you are the responsible commercial bank, this is the time when they should be able to issue some sort of statement, because they can't do this without the authority of the the central bank, the regulator. He should say, no, this is just a normal business transaction and so on. It has nothing to do with the confidence in the economy or the financial sector.
In the financial sector, you are going to have that.
Yes,
so
and
the statement is important.
It does, and then you might have a run on that bank.
That's the point.
And I sometimes wonder, this guy is holding these offices whether you said sometimes okay. I wanted to be humorous. So to me, I think this was the time, because people are like, maybe the economy is not doing well.
Yes.
That's why these banks are doing well.
Speculation.
Maybe that bank I should get my money in case.
Maybe the money in the bank was stolen.
Close and so on. Or is it because of what has happened at Bank of Uganda? So it is affecting this.
It undermines
because
confidence in
the central bank is actually the bank of the commercial banks and so on. So you cause a debate which is very, very unnecessary. And the central bank should come in and say, explain it. That this is normal and there is nothing, nobody is going to lose money.
Timothy Kalyeja is also weighing in on Twitter, formerly Twitter, Minister of State for Finance General Duties. Is that the right person to comment on the BOU robbery in quotes and so on?
No, yes,
on the floor of the house.
See, the BOU is under the supervision of Minister of Finance. So that is within his docket.
At least on the floor of the house as well.
And he was not reporting on the details of the crime. Because then that would go to the police and so on. But generally, an institution under his docket which has had a problem. But Bank of Uganda itself should have issued a statement, in my view.
Sydney Asubo, last word on the capital gang. I don't know if I have to invite all others who applied for KCCA job. They're going to say how
in
come
case you are chosen.
Yes, I might have to do the same.
No. I will not talk about KCCA today.
But first, we can wish you luck.
Thank you. But my last word is the current best to money for Uganda. That is the size of the financial service sector. There is a formula that is used by the World Bank and the IMF, is $8 billion. In the projections by the central bank, that in 4 years' time it will be about $12 billion. Now, this makes it one of the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa. So that gives you the magnitude of the risks and vulnerabilities that are in the sector. So we at the FIA, together with the Ministry of Justice and of Finance and the other financial sector regulators, did a risk assessment, the risks that are in this economy and the vulnerabilities as well. And then we one of the fundamental recommendations we made was the promotion of the e-economy, because one of the drawbacks was the fact that a lot of we are largely cash economy, so that's why you have things like border running away with money, 500 shillings being forged notes being found in a bank, somebody disappearing with a bullion van, 1 billion shillings. Now, the larger economy you have, the lesser you have of these instances. So, of course, we'll now urge government to take, because it was a medium to long-term strategy to formalize the economy. So that would be my last word today.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners of the Capital Gang. Continue following us on our social media platforms. Thank you, Star Cafe, for powering the gang. I'm not sure if Sydney had any bite at all, or he brought his chapati in the pocket.
No.
Okay,
I trust people in this room.
You trust people in this room.
Yes.
So thank you, Honorable Katuntu, Honorable Anyoto. Thank you, FIA, former head of FIA, and good luck with your next ongoings, I should say. Thank you, Council Musisi.
Governor, Bank of Uganda, and the ED for Capital Authority.
Thank you so much. I am Oscar Semwe Amsuke, and I shall see you next week.